welcome back to section 9.2 Precalculus. We're going to start graphing some polar curves. Looking at number 11 here, we got r is equal to 2 minus 2 sine theta. So the first thing I want to ask myself is what kind of curve is this? Anytime I see a plus or minus in there, I know we're talking about some sort of limison. In this case, a is equal to b, so 2 over 2 would be equal to 1. And when a over b is equal to 1, we have a cardioid. I'm not sure if you caught it on the last video, but I did not spell it correctly in that video. So we have a cardioid, which is that heart-shaped with a very pointy dimple to it. The next thing I want to ask myself is, what is my symmetry? Since we're talking about sine theta, not cosine theta, when talking about sine theta, we know we're going to be symmetrical about the theta over 2 axis. So, sorry, pi over 2, when theta is equal to pi over 2 axis. Next thing I want to know is, what is my maximum r value? What's the farthest away from that pole that I'm going to get? And to find my r values, I have to ask myself, all right, we're talking about sine theta. What is the maximum and minimum value that sine theta will give us? Well, remember sine theta back in trig, when we were looking at our sine graphs, they oscillated between -1 and +1. So our r value is going to be either when this guy is -1, so I'm not sure why I put a parentheses there, 2 minus 2 times -1, or when 2 is +1. So -2 times -1 would be +2, plus 2 would be 4, or 2 minus 2 would be 0. So my maximum r value we know is going to be 4. And now I want to know, well, where does that occur? Well, 2 minus 2 sine theta is equal to 4. I'm going to subtract 2. I get -2 sine theta. Subtracting 2, 4 minus 2 is 2. Dividing by -2, I get sine theta is equal to -1. And then when is sine theta equal to -1? That's not at pi over 2, Miss Harris. That's at 3 pi over 2. So I know at 3 pi over 2, we're going to be down here at 4. And that's the farthest away we're going to be from the pole. All right, and the last thing I'm going to look for are my zeros. So when is my r value 0? So we're going to subtract 2. I get -2 sine theta. 0 minus 2 would be -2. Dividing by that -2, I get sine theta is equal to -2 divided by -2, which is 1. Sine theta is 1 when we are at pi over 2. So my zeros are at theta is equal to pi over 2. At pi over 2, we're at 0. Now, I can't really draw a heart shape based just off of this. So I'm going to go ahead and figure out, okay, what about in between these points? So we know at pi over 2, we're down here, or sorry, we're at the pole. And we know at 3 pi over 2, we're down at 4. What about at, say, 0? Well, what is sine of 0? It's 0. And so I'd have 2 minus 2 times 0. Well, that's just going to be 2. So at 0, we're at 2. Same thing if I plug in pi. What's sine of pi? 0. So 2 minus 2 pi, we're going to be at 2 as well. So now I've got enough points in there. I think I can do a fairly decent job of graphing. Well, let's see if I can do it. A fat cholesterol-ridden, heart-ish shape polar graph. It's really hard to graph nicely on this tablet, but I think you get the idea there. What I'm really going to be looking for is, do you have your maximum value? Do you know where your zeros are at? Do you have a nice point in there, and is, instead of it just being a dimple? All right, that's it for 11. Let's see if we can get one more in on this video. This next one's not too bad. It is well, I'm going to ask you, what kind of graph is this one? It is cosine theta, just theta itself. So if it's just theta, not 3 theta, 4 theta, 5 theta, whatever, we know this is going to be a circle. What's the maximum radius? well, let's start with symmetry. It's cosine theta, so we're symmetrical about what? About the polar axis. Remember, your polar axis is what we think of in rectangular coordinates as the x-axis. My maximum r values, again, cosine oscillates between -1 and 1. So r is either going to be 3 times -1 or 3 times 1. So this would give us -3 and 3. So my maximum r value is going to be 3. Where does that occur at? Well, that's when 3 cosine theta is equal to 3. That's when cosine theta is equal to +1. And so that's when theta is equal to 0. All right. And then the last thing we want to do is find our 0. So 3 cosine theta is equal to 0 when cosine theta is equal to 0 divided by 3, which is still 0. Cosine theta is equal to 0 at 2 places, at pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So when we are at 0, we're out here at 3. When we're at pi over 2, we're back here at the pole. When we're at pi, we're at -3, but that's going to put us right back here. And at 3 pi over 2, we're back at the pole. So what's happening is we've got a circle. This does not look like a circle, but hopefully you get the right idea. Symmetrical about the polar axis. Maximum radius value is at 3. All right, that's it for